Hi guys, welcome to the Franky Balls Show, starring Franky Balls with your life coaching podcast. Today's podcast is we're gonna talk about the first 100 sets of cold approach pickup. Now, normally, like I said, I've recorded all 1,000 of my first cold approach day game sets. A lot of them on video with like a little spy camera on a pen, but all of them with a recorder in my pocket for the voice. I don't think that there's very much point in seeing the body language of a girl until we probably hit about 600 or 700 sets. I'll throw a few on my YouTube channel so that you can check them out to kind of see how a girl's reacting, but for the most part, you can tell what's going on just with her voice. The first 100 sets that we're going to talk about today, I'm not going to include any recordings because it's kind of pointless. The first 100 sets that I did a structured game almost exclusively never got past a minute or two. I don't know if that's normal for a structured day gamer to not get past a minute or two in the first 100 sets or not, but for me that was pretty much the case. I did get one number that texted me back a little bit on open number 9 on my very first day, which was actually very good. So let's go through these first 100 sets and what you're gonna likely expect as a beginner day gamer doing your first 100 sets of cold approach pickup using structured game. The first 10 sets took me 3 times to go out. I went out alone. The first 2 times I just walked around looking at girls, probably creepily, trying to get the courage to go up and run my structured game interaction on them. The third time I went out, I actually opened 10 girls, and all 10 were very good interactions, but none of them hooked. It was just kind of, hi, excuse me, I like your coat. I think it's nice. Oh, thank you very much. They'd walk away. Hi, excuse me. They'd walk away. Hi, excuse me. Sorry, I gotta go. Hi, excuse me. You know, those types of things. Very. If I included the recordings, it would just be, 5 or 10 seconds of each girl. Set number 9, I got a number. The girl was looking at me from quite a ways away. And I didn't use any structure. I just nervously went up to her. I said hi. And she said hi, or she didn't say anything back. And everybody at the bus stop looked at me. I went and sat down. And then about 3 minutes later, she's like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to be rude. You just scared me. And we talked a little bit. She gave me her number, but it was just like when I texted her back, she was like, hey, just so you know, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm just looking for a friend. And I tried to escalate like all the YouTube's videos kind of were telling me to do at the time. And she eventually just texted back like, hey, we need to cease contact. And so I was like, okay, well, whatever. And then that was really the only number success I got for the first 100 sets. It was just the first 100 sets, if you added them all together, I'm gonna guess I could probably splice all of my audio clips together for my first 100 sets, and it'd probably last like 5 minutes or 6 minutes for 100 interactions. There was just a ton of highs, the girl not hearing me, a ton of highs creeping the girl out, a ton of trying to do the London day game model stop, where you run in front of the girl and not leaving enough distance, a ton of trying to stop her with the London day game model yad stop. Some people call it wheel of fortune. Some people call it where you kind of put your arm out and stop the girl, where I left 6 or 7 feet too much when I stopped her, and she just walked around me. There was a ton of getting the distance correct, doing the yad stop or the wheel of fortune stop, and not making eye contact, and having her just be creeped out, like almost mad that I wasn't looking at her in the eyes. There was a ton of doing that, making eye contact, but not smiling at all, and kind of almost scaring her a little bit. There was a ton of putting my hand out, running in front of the girl to try and stop her and having her run into me because I didn't leave enough room for her to slow down. There was a ton of putting my hand out, stopping the girl, making eye contact, but not raising my hands up in a stop motion. So she was just like looking at me like, what are you doing? Why did you run in front of me? Make solid eye contact and just stand there. There's a ton of those just weird interactions. So what did I learn from the first 100 sets of structured day game cold approach pickup? Well, what I learned the most was, first of all, learn what to say, because if you don't know what you're going to say, you won't stop the girl. So you need to, in your head, at least have 1 or 2 minutes practiced of what you're going to say. If you hit more than 2 minutes, congratulations. I don't think you'll hit more than 2 minutes very often in your first 100 sets. So learn what to say, because when you see a cute girl, if you don't have something planned to say, that you're just going to be in your head. You're not going to stop her, and you're just going to think, oh, what should I say? And that's going to be a reason for you to excuse yourself from stopping her. So before you go out, learn what to say. That was probably the first thing that I learned. The second thing that I learned is, don't quit your job or anything like that to go do your first 100 sets of day game. Don't wait for that kind of crazy moment to be like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job, then I'll be forced to take day game seriously. The reason for that is because when you go out and do 2 hours worth of cold approach pickup day game, after you're done that, your body is going to be so filled with adrenaline for the most part that you're going to be almost useless for 4 or 5 hours. So it's not like you can quit your job and go do 10 hours a day of cold approach pickup. You can do 2 hours, and then your brain is going to release so much adrenaline into your body, you're going to be largely useless. So keep your job, keep your business, don't change much in your life. Just start doing some cold approach pickup. You're going to get this adrenaline released into your body. It's going to make you useless. You may as well be, getting paid by your boss to do something, or you may as well be, doing whatever it is in your own business that you can do on your own. You're not going to have the mental capacity or the physical capacity to go out and do any more than 2 hours a day. So just get that out of your head right now. Third thing that I realized is, I actually realized this before I did the first 100 sets, because I did natural game when I was getting into multiple long-term relationships with my wife. Don't take a boot camp before you've done your first 100 sets. There's just no point. Unless your approach anxiety is so severe that you need a boot camp instructor to get you through those first 100 sets. And you need that pressure. You need somebody there for you. But, let's let go right now of this notion that you're going to go on a boot camp for 3 days and be a pimp afterwards. It just doesn't work. I've been on multiple boot camps. Every one of them that I went on all advertised after these 3 days, you're going to be this awesome pimp that's getting laid, And when I went on the boot camp, I thought that was true, but after taking, half dozen boot camps, it's like, no, nobody's getting laid on boot camp. If the journey of cold approach pickup to getting competent with it is 1,000 steps, I'm going to say taking a boot camp is 10 or 20 steps. Sometimes they're the hardest 10 or 20 steps, especially if you're suffering from extreme approach anxiety. Sometimes a boot camp will push you through those first 10 or 20 steps that you might not take otherwise. But if there's any way you can get your first 100 sets done, at least, I'd say even 500 sets done, do that before you take a boot camp, because you need to get in a position where when you're talking to girls, your body is not chock full of adrenaline. Because if you're on a boot camp and your body's just chock full of adrenaline because you haven't got the approaches under your belt yet, the instructor is going to observe you and he's going to tell you what to do, and then you're going to go do 20 sets and you're going to go do the exact same thing 20 times. And the reason is because your brain doesn't have the capacity to change anything, because you're panicking from talking to the girl because you're not used to it yet. So if it's at all possible, find yourself a wing, find yourself a way to get your first, I'm going to just say 500 sets done before you spend any money on a boot camp. Even when you're done your 500 sets, though, a boot camp most of the time, like I say, if your journey and pickup from 0 to competent is 1,000 steps, the most a boot camp's ever going to give you is like 20 or 30 steps. It's not this cure-all thing that you go on a boot camp and you're some pickup god afterwards. This is not the way that it is. A boot camp would be successful if you've been doing 500 sets and your results haven't gone up. You know, there might be a blind spot that you have that you're not seeing. A boot camp would be perfect for something like that. You know, they might be able to show you what you're doing wrong and give you a bit of an epiphany. A boot camp might be good if you can't find another way to get through your approach anxiety. You might be able to take a boot camp to get you through your approach anxiety, although it will kind of annoy the instructor a little bit if you're using him just to get through your AA. And I guess a boot camp would be good if you just have lots of money and you just don't care too much about it. I would take a boot camp in that way. I didn't have a lot of great experiences for these boot camps, but I don't regret them either. I took a 5-day boot camp with one of the world's best, at least one of the world's most prominent pickup artists. I think over the course of a 5-day weekend, he might have spent like 8 or 10 minutes with me at most over 5 days. That's not to say that his assistants and everything didn't spend time with me. His assistant spent quite a bit of time with me, probably 3 to 5 hours per night. But the actual instructor that I thought I was going to be learning from only spent like less than 10 minutes over 5 days with me. It was pretty bad. And even at that, a lot of the time it was with a group of like 10 or 12 people, you know, and it was more like a talk you'd see on YouTube just live in a Starbucks where he was talking at a table or something like that. And to be honest, that's kind of the way boot camps go. You know, you're gonna, in a 3-day weekend, you're probably gonna get actually maybe 4 or 5 hours in field, maybe 7 hours in field with the instructor. And with 7 hours in field with that instructor, he's gonna have the opportunity to observe you do maybe 8 approaches, and that's about it. So grand total, he's gonna be able to observe you maybe 20 minutes and give you an hour's worth of advice. That being said, though, I really think that's probably all it's going to take, right? Like somebody that's really, really good at cold approach pickup, they can watch you do a half dozen sets and they'll tell you something that is likely going to be your problem. It doesn't take 3 days. So in other words, the 3-day boot camp is great, but you know, the value they could give you over the 3 days is 90% given to you by observing you for 15 minutes and telling you 20 minutes worth of advice. So what are some other things we can expect for our first 100 sets? Your nerves are going to be tense. Before you go out and do your first 100 sets, you're probably going to be in your head for like 3 hours. You know, with the adrenaline, just being nervous that you know you're going to force yourself to go out. You know you're going to force yourself to go open. Some of the advice would be, first of all, try and work on your vibe before you go out. Try and find things to do, like maybe download the app Headspace and do some meditation for 10 minutes before you go into the mall. Learn your routines really, really well so that you're never going to be able to use the excuse of you don't know what to say. I created flashcards and, you know, drew little pictures on them with what to say on the back. For example, I drew a picture of a girl with a bunch of shopping bags, and then on the back of the flashcard I would write, "Are you trying to start a shopping record?" for one of the spikes in the interaction. Listen to music before you go out. Try and find a wing if you can. I really had a struggle with wings because the community is not as developed as I think some people think it is. I'm in a city with only 1 million people in it, And oftentimes I would find another beginner day gamer and would have plans to go out at 6 p.m. And at about 5:30, the weasels would get to them and they would send me a WhatsApp or a text saying, "Hey, something came up. I can't go out today. Sorry." And that happens quite a bit when you're trying to find a wing. A lot of people are going to think, you know what, I'm going to schedule this mandate with this guy. We're going to go do some cold approach pickup together on Wednesday. It'll be Monday when he sends you that text. He's using you as an accountability partner. He'll be thinking about it all week. He'll be almost making himself sick on Wednesday because he knows he's not going to be able to go do any approaches. And then he sends you a text saying, "Hey, I can't make it Wednesday." Some bullshit reason, like some family thing, some work thing, whatever. There's a lot of people like that in the community. So if you find a good wing, treat him good if you can. Don't be one of these guys that flakes on people, and also realize that it's going to be very easy for you to excuse yourself. If you find somebody you plan on going out Wednesday, you're going to have a body filled with adrenaline and nervousness. If you're planning on going out at 6 o'clock, you're going to be thinking of excuses at about 5:30 that you can use to not have to go out. He's going to be doing the same thing, and a lot of times one of you is going to cancel, and there's going to be a sigh of relief on both parties for not having to go out and face their fears. So what I did to combat that, ability for me to excuse myself from doing sets and to excuse myself from feeling that uncomfortable feeling and facing my approach anxiety, was after I had about a half dozen of those people that were flaking on me and allowing me to have all that adrenaline go through my body and then not have to actually go approach anybody, as I went on a local forum and I wrote on there that, "Hey, I'm looking for a serious wing. I don't care if you do day game or you don't do day game, but I'm willing to pay $25 an hour for 2 hours to do 3 to 5 day game sessions per week," because I was trying to do 50 sets a week. So I found 2 people that did that, and at that point I was the one in charge of the schedule. There was no more weasels. There was no more ability for me to excuse myself because of somebody else's choices. So then I would set up a schedule, usually on Sunday, with these 2 people I was paying $25 an hour to. And to get my first 500 sets done, I used that method. Every Sunday, I would tell these 2 guys that, they were almost acting in a way as my employees, that, "Hey, you know what, this week it's going to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to go out. We're going to do 2 hours. Here's the places I want to meet. Here's the times I want to do it. Does this work?" And with very little rescheduling, I would just have a schedule set up. I would try not to almost think about it until about a half an hour before I'd go out. And then I'd go about a half an hour early. I'd sit in my truck. I'd go over my flashcards. I would get my recorder out and I would start recording what I was going to say. And then I would play it back to me. I'd record it, play it back, so I knew exactly what to say about a half an hour before I'd go and meet my paid day game wing. And then as soon as about 10 minutes before I was supposed to meet him came, I would go start doing what Tom Torero calls hit and runs. So I would go, and there was this long walkway to the mall, and I would demand myself to do at least 3 hit and runs. And what a hit and run is just going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, nice jacket," and keep walking and don't even look back to see how they respond. And then say something like, "Hey, nice shoes," and don't even look how they respond. And then finding another old lady or something and saying, "Hey, excuse me, do you have the time?" And just doing things like that to get yourself in a social mood. Eventually I tried to do 5 of those, and then as time went on, I tried to do at least 3 to 5 of those hit and runs. And then when I had a really good session, I noticed I would do one where it was a contentious issue, and I would do that on purpose. When I did that, it would make that day game session more successful. And by a contentious issue, I would do 3 or 4 hit and runs saying, "Nice jacket, nice shoes, I like your toque," something like that. And then if there was a dude and I said nice jacket and he didn't say anything, I would make a little bit of a contentious, like laughable issue for myself. Like, hey dude, I said nice jacket, man. Like, what's going on? Like, with a smile on your face, but kind of like, why aren't you responding? And then just kind of like just to kind of get yourself comfortable with tension and realize that it's okay and all those types of things. Get yourself out of your head. Then I'd go meet my day game wing that I was paying, and we'd walk around the mall or a university campus or a popular street where I do day game in Calgary, Alberta. And the rule was I always had to do 10 sets. I made up these business cards that I kept in my pocket with about 30 of the most common mistakes that I had Staples make up for me for $9.99. And oftentimes, if I had to go to the bathroom or something, I'd review the 30 most common mistakes on that business card. And whenever I did an approach, I'd make a rip on that card. And I would try and do 10 sets in 2 hours. And that's how I did my first 100 sets. The first 100 sets, they're going to be a tough 100 sets. I feel for all the people out there that haven't done their first 100 sets or that have to do the first 100 sets. But you know what? Like, it's almost, I would almost go so far as to say those rejections are just as valuable, if not maybe even a little more valuable than the successes. It's almost like girls just have a sixth sense for how thick your skin is. And eventually these 100 sets or these day game approaches that reject you are going to make your skin so thick that people can just sense it. So the rejections are just as important as the positive experiences. So don't go out and do 100 sets and get no positive experiences or 1 or 2 positive experiences and consider yourself a failure. That is definitely not what's going on. Those 98 bad sets that you have, or those 90 or 80 or however many bad sets you have, those bad sets are every single bit as important as the good sets. You need those bad sets just as much as you need the good sets. There's not a really good pickup artist in the world, nor has there ever been, that has not had just an absolute carnage amount of horrible interactions from trying to learn day game or any kind of cold approach pickup. It's part of the process. It's a necessary part. You got to train yourself when you get rejected to just think about the positive things and just think, you know what, like, this is part of it, right? Like, one more rejection down. Actually, on one of my Excel spreadsheets where I kept track of all my stats and everything, I actually put a column for rejections. And in my own head, I said, you know what? As soon as I get 1,000 rejections, I'll probably be good at game. So I also had a column for the positive experiences, but I always, especially during the early part of learning cold approach pickup, looked at that column that said rejections and seeing how close I was getting to 1,000. And I have to admit, after about 300 or 400 rejections, you just don't care anymore. It's just no big deal whatsoever. Actually, today I went and I approached a girl in a mall, an 18-year-old girl. I stopped her and her mom was about 30 feet behind her. And I stopped this 18 or 19-year-old girl. I said, hey, excuse me, I just thought you looked nice. I saw you walking over there. And, she was smiling and she was loving the interaction. And then her mom came and pushed me and said, move along, buddy, because I'm an older guy and her daughter's, if you're not red pill, that's, maybe not as normal to people like that as it is in our world. And I just remember being genuinely happy by that, almost laughable. But if I recall, if that happened in my first 10 sets, that just would have been devastating. But now that my skin's thick, that's part of why cold approach pickup works, because girls are attracted to dudes that just have a really strong frame with thick skin. You don't get that without hundreds of rejections under your belts. Okay, so that's the first 100 sets. Like I said, I've recorded my first 1,000 sets of structured cold approach pickup day game. But when I was going through my first 100 sets, I just quickly read over my field reports, and my recordings, and there just wasn't much to put in this podcast for recordings for the first 100 sets. It was, like I say, if I clipped them all together, it'd be like 5 or 7 minutes or something. I don't think there would be a lot to learn. Okay, so that's Franky Balls with the Franky Balls Show, your life coaching podcast. And this section is on probably my most passionate section of my life coaching, and that's cold approach pickup. I absolutely love cold approach pickup. It's therapy, and it makes me happy, and I love doing it, and there's not a feeling in the world that feels as good or unique as when you go do 10 sets in 2 hours and you get 3 or 4 phone numbers and you've made 10 people's day. So cheers. See you on the next podcast.